We are the guardians of Zimbabwe, and our mission is to provide better institutions and solutions for the people of Zimbabwe and hope for a brighter future now and for future generations. Zimbabwe is slightly larger than Montana and located in sub-Saharan Africa, where it's landlocked between Zambia and South Africa to the north and south, and Mozambique and Botswana to the east and west. The climate varies depending on time and location, but overall with a rainy season spanning from November to March. Outside of this time frame, there are recurring droughts that are detrimental to the agricultural dependency in Zimbabwean life.
One of the biggest problems that needs to be fixed in Zimbabwe is hunger. In 2016, the United Nations has warned that hunger is at risk of spiraling out of control. Their poor economy has created conditions in households where food is unaffordable. Unpredictable weather has brought droughts that rapidly decrease agricultural production. And on top of that, political land reforms have damaged their commercial farming industry, leading to... Due to the inadequate food supply, it is hard for the people to get an efficient amount of micronutrients. This is from the lack of diversification in their diet, which mainly consists of filler foods such as mealie meal and plumpy nut. Looking at all these problems, children are the highest at risk. There are about 33,000 children in Zimbabwe suffering from severe malnutrition.
In Zimbabwe, there are 1.4 million people living with HIV. The most heavily concentrated area affected by this epidemic is sub-Saharan Africa, particularly Zimbabwe. They have many cultural and social barriers that account for the large numbers of those affected. It is largely driven by unprotected sex. Patriarchal values of their culture is the main reason behind women's higher tendency to be affected. Gender inequality and marginalizing of women is an issue, with 68% of men believing that women don't have the right to refuse sexual intercourse. Sex trafficking and violence are key contributors because they are both currently very common, and more than half of all sex workers test positive. Sexual education is also hardly available. Only 52% of women and 47% of men are completely informed. Despite these downfalls to Zimbabwe's culture, promoting contraceptive methods is frowned upon because many believe it promotes sex at a young age.
Maternal mortality is one of the most devastating health concerns in Zimbabwe. Maternal mortality usually occurs when a pregnant woman is not given proper medical attention or supplies. Zimbabwe has one of the highest maternal mortality rates in Africa. The leading cause of maternal death is a simple lack of healthcare professionals and materials. Most births occur without a healthcare professional present to check the woman's vitals, monitor the baby, and deliver the baby safely. Another reason for the high maternal mortality rates is the culture of Zimbabwe. It is a large number of women who are impregnated before the age of 18. This is a troubling statistic because younger women whose bodies are not mature enough are more susceptible to dying in childbirth.
Poor health situations in Zimbabwe can be attributed to the suffering Zimbabwe economy. As you can see from the graph on the first slide showing the relationship between the rapid money supply growth and the hyperinflation bogging down the country. As we move to the following slide, you can see the varying monetary values used in Zimbabwe. Since the early 90s, Zimbabwe has faced an economic decline. Unfortunately for Zimbabwe, their economic troubles don't seem to have an end in the foreseeable future. In 2012 alone, Secretary General Japhet Moyo said that unemployment was between 80 and 90%, which was actually improved from the 95% unemployment posted the previous year, clearly being the highest rate in the world. However, the hope is that Zimbabwe can diversify their market, opposed to relying strictly on agriculture to supply jobs with compensation, and to engage in trade.
Now we're going to discuss some possible solutions for these issues. To counteract the drought season seen in the hunger problem, funding and irrigation systems will improve the effectiveness of commercial farming. Irrigation will prove very useful in increasing farm output. We also plan on improving agriculture education on how to produce foods with better nutritional value. With this emphasis on education, we can show individuals how to properly preserve foods to maintain quality. Consequently, the solution with irrigation raises problems on water availability, and with education, there comes the issue of landowners are willing to learn these new practices. Nonetheless, our solutions will work powerfully to bring change to Zimbabwe's food crisis.
In order to decrease the amount of maternal mortalities, we must educate the women of Zimbabwe about the risks of pregnancy and how to diagnose potential issues. If we teach these women how to properly take care of their bodies during pregnancy, the maternal mortality rates will surely drop. Another key way to fight maternal mortality is to make healthcare readily available. In order to get these supplies and professionals, there would have to be a large financial investment from the government. Finally, a public campaign could encourage men to wait until women are at a more suitable age to marry. This would cut down on extremely young girls who are physically unfit to have a child dying in childbirth. The people of Zimbabwe may reject the idea of marrying at an older age, Also, gathering medical supplies and professionals will be a financial struggle.
To combat HIV and AIDS, we propose clinics resembling Planned Parenthood be made in order to provide more accessible contraceptive, educational, and health services. It is also important to educate future generations in Zimbabwe to create a more informed society. Finally, condoms and alternative contraceptive methods should be publicly available despite the fact there may be some resistance. To help combat this, public sexual education courses will be offered.
For our budget, we are allotting 30% of our $1 billion to each of our issues. We will also set aside 5% for housing and travel expenses. The 30% for each issue will include salaries for staff members, as well as specified materials pertaining to the certain issue.